God, now the shit is explained. I'm taking niggas on a trip straight through memory lane. It's like that, y'all. It's like that, y'all.
Welcome to Raptors Weekly for the week of September the 8th. It's Labor Day weekend, but we don't get the weekend off. We get to do some podcasting, and Andrew's here, man. What's up, Andrew?
How's it going, Zarar? It's been a little while.
I know, a couple of weeks off for you, that is. But I was working with Will.
Yeah, I was just working.
Yeah. Will had an interesting week. He's no longer with RR. He's not writing for Raptors Republic anymore, but we hope to still have him on the podcast and whatnot. So if you're a Will fan, and I know there are some out there, believe it or not, you'll hear.
Are not. He's fine.
He's all right.
No, Will's awesome. Will's super talented. I like that dude.
He'll still be on the podcast, but he just won't be writing anymore for now for the site. But things will continue. We'll still be all right. We got some good guys here.
We'll land on our feet.
So for this week's pod, man, there's no Raptor memes going on. There's some Kyle Lowry talk. It's basically he finally spoke about why he looks like a stick now. He's lost like 65 pounds, and he's grown 6 inches. So you're gonna see Kyle Lowry coming to trend.
He has a 6 finger on his left hand now.
Yeah. Yep. All that, and he's gonna be the MVP next season, and that's what it certainly looks like. So he talked about his weight loss and said the funny comment that he made was that it all started like when his wife told him, like in a roundabout way, you were best at your college weight.
It's a well-crafted sentence.
I know, eh? Maybe I should tell that to my wife, see how she reacts.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine saying that to him? Hon, I feel like you were best at your college weight. Don't you think that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be a professional athlete who's looking to up their game in order to receive that comment well.
Yeah, and respond to it, not just receive it, and then take that to a whole new level. So he's talking about like extreme Pilates and all these things he's doing, and obviously the photos coming from Instagram look fantastic, man. But I made the comment last week that that weight loss, that fitness is getting me a little, I'd say, more excited than even some of the signings we've had.
Okay.
Don't you think so? Because when Kyle Lowry's on his game, when he's like, healthy and fit, like he's like we saw last year that he's capable of being like the best point guard in the East, I would say.
Yeah, he can be a beast. And I mean, we saw him just when he was used so heavily, he broke down and he got tired, and he really wasn't the same the rest of the year, just trying to get back into shape. And not back into shape as in he was out of shape, but just trying to rehab from injuries and just being worn down. And I think that he's clearly made this a really big priority, and that's exciting to see. We might see peak Kyle Lowry for a longer period of time.
Yeah, and the thing with him is that he's not a type of guy like who relies on his like roundness to get at his advantage. He's not a guy who like carves space with his with his waist or whatever to like get open. So I think this should help him, because some guys, like, remember Mark Jackson is the one I can remember. Yeah. Like he used to put guys on his hip, and he needed to be kind of a bit fat to do that. Or even Raymond Felton, for that matter, even though he's a kind of a bad example.
I think Raymond Felton is more the example of like fat Raymond Felton wasn't better at anything except eating donuts.
Yeah.
I think fat Raymond Felton was just, yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like some players need to be a little fat to be effective. But Kyle Lowry is not a guy who relies on his like roundness to gain an advantage. So this shouldn't hurt him. This should all be positive.
Sure. I mean, an example could be like when we saw LeBron last year change his diet and try to come in as skinny LeBron. And, he seemed like he was breaking down and not really playing as powerful. And then he went to Miami and came back with HGH LeBron body. Healthy LeBron body. And it really brought his game up. We did actually see Kyle Lowry post up opposing point guards a little bit last year and use that great big ass to good effect in doing so. But, I mean, it was an interesting weapon for them to go to every now and then. But I don't ever think it played anything close to enough of a big role to matter. I think that if he can be more active and more energetic and more engaged on defense because he's got more energy and he's quicker and in better shape, that's far more helpful than the occasional Kyle Lowry post up.
Yeah. And just checking the site on the sidebar. I mean, we also see some things about Luis Scola kind of dominated Canada in at FIBA Americas, and I saw the highlight clips. It's on the site if you want to check it out. Old man game all around, man. I don't think his feet left the ground at any point in that entire game, and he scored 35. It was. Have you seen the highlights at all?
Yeah, I did. I saw that. It was a good reality check on how bad Kelly Olynyk's defense is, and just how talented Scola still can be. Like he's generally going to be guarded by guys who are more effective than Kelly Olynyk, but it's nice to know that when there's a mismatch there, he can still expose that. He's not washed up.
Yeah, absolutely not. He's got craft all over him, man. And going against like other bench power forwards, granted the league's kind of going in a way where like his position is getting more stretched and whatnot, but he should still be able to pose some mismatches coming off the bench. So I look to him not just being as like some time filler, but actually a real basketball player giving you a real advantage.
I mean, let's remember that he's replacing Tyler. He's playing the Tyler Hansbrough role this year, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, by comparison, he's going to look like Boris Diaw on offense. There was just how actually competent and able to move the ball around, see the floor, and make a move. He is.
I was talking to Devlin in that podcast a couple of weeks back, and he actually was talking about Bismack Biyombo. He was kind of bigging him up, saying that he might be the kind of the first big off the bench. Did you buy that one?
No. Like, I hope in that like I hope not. Like I think that if he's the first big off the bench, it means that Valanciunas isn't getting a whole lot of run. It means that we don't really have any other option there, and like I think that we could hopefully get something interesting out of Bismack Biyombo, but I think the reason why everyone's okay with the Bismack Biyombo signing is there's not really a downside. It's like if he doesn't bring anything to the table, then he's a 5 minutes a game backup center, and you find minutes for someone else to fill that gap, and he's still young and athletic, and if he can learn to be a rim protector or offer you anything, then it's all gravy because he's not really making any money. So I really have a hard like he lost minutes and couldn't stay competent on a team that has been at times historically bad and missed the playoffs last year in Charlotte. So, I mean, like, what are we expecting? What are you expecting?
Bismack, nothing, man. I made the point in the last pod that if Bebe can't beat Bismack Biyombo for minutes, I don't know what Bebe can do.
Yeah.
But enough of that riff-raff talk, man. Those guys aren't getting any minutes, so no point talking about it. So this podcast, we talked about, pre-show that we talk about some Raptor memories that are kind of etched in our mind for good or bad, like things that have happened to the Raptors over the last 20 years, is it whatnot? That you just can't forget. For whatever reason, they just stick in your mind, whether it be a particular game or a shot or a possession or what have you, or a moment that you just can't shake because you were moved so much by it. And we came up with a few moments that kind of we remember. So we're gonna go over that, and listener, feel free to respond in the comments or on Twitter on what your favorite Raptor moment is. And not necessarily favorite or the most memorable for either a good or bad reason.
Raptors fans, this is your life.
So Andrew, I'll start. I'll start with one that most fans remember. I mean, I hope they do, because it was awkward as hell, and it happened in Madison Square Garden. It wasn't even actually a game moment. It was the infamous interview given by Hedo Turkoglu after after he finally had a good game after a string of horrible games. He won the game in New York with some good play, and then he gave this interview.
You came out tonight early, aggressive. What was different for you tonight in terms of just setting the tone with your game in this game?
Ball.
The ball in your hands, and you did a lot with it.
I got nothing else to say.
You had the ball in your hands and you made plays.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Hedo Turkoglu.
Funny after all these years.
Is that the best Raptors soundbite of all time?
Oh God! I mean, I remember the thing with that is that he proceeded then to have like 10 shitty games in a row, despite having the ball in his hand.
Yeah. I love Jack Armstrong just bending over backwards, trying to be like, "Well, do you mean this, Hedo? Like, do you think like you're saying this?" He's just like, "No, I'm just fucking with you," is what I'm doing. Like, there's not a language barrier here. It's not me being tired or not having the wind to get through a sentence. I'm just like I'm annoyed and fuck you and well.
Yeah, there's no moment for this, but I remember at the start of that season, he was coming back from like I think he played internationally or something, and the Raptors basically gave him the entire training camp off. Like he played like 2 preseason games, and it was all because he was fatigued.
Yeah.
And which basically meant that he wasn't ready for the season, and he finally, got in shape around like January, and by that time he was really shitty.
Yeah. But I remember there were pictures circulating in the Toronto media, like the Toronto Sun would have clips of him like in a hookah bar or something like that, and some bad headline about him being out of shape. It was great.
Yeah. And then apparently like he moved to Toronto to like for the Turkish community. And it turns out we don't have a huge Turkish community. No. It's like
it's not big.
It's not very big, so he was a little disappointed.
It's like a third of a block on the Danforth. That's what you get.
Oh, Hiro, that was that's definitely etched in my mind. Andrew, what do you got?
All right, I'm going in a different direction. I'm going to my favorite Raptors game of all time, and that was February 23rd, I think, 2001. I was at this game. It was the Sacramento Kings versus the surging Toronto Raptors. Went into triple overtime. The Raptors lost by 1. Vince had 38 points, including a couple highlight plays. It was the first game we had the JYD trade, where the Raptors immediately started their irrational love affair with JYD. I think he played 3 minutes, and we just all went nuts for him. Alvin Williams, it was his first game ever starting. Played well. Shut down White Chocolate on the other side. Jason Williams. It's the most fun I've ever had in a basketball game. I absolutely loved that early 2000s Sacramento Kings team. I was in early on them. I would watch them whenever I could, which, I mean, we're talking before League Pass, right? So you would get 3 NBA on NBC Saturday afternoon games a year where you could watch someone like the Sacramento Kings play. Otherwise, it was just highlights. And
yeah.
Really great basketball.
Yeah, what I remember for that game is obviously Stojakovic went off in that, and we lost in the end. It was that after he hit like 1-3, like impossible, like a 30-footer, like he did the air cup to the crowd.
Sure did.
And I was just like, I hate this motherfucker. Like at that point, because I have this irrational hate for NBA players. Like certain players, I just hate them. Like on Twitter, everybody's like, oh, what a great play. He was such a great... No, I fucking hate him, man. If I hate a player, I hate him for life. So even when he was at the Raptors much later on, I hated him.
See, I wasn't even that upset about that because, again, like I would always talk to everyone about how the Sacramento Kings are great. And everyone was just like, what are you talking about? The Kings suck. You don't know what's going on. And I would talk about how, Peja Stojakovic is awesome. And I don't even think that people knew that I was talking with, like the other, 14-year-old kids that I was having an argument about the Sacramento Kings with in 2001 were just going like, no, like they'd never heard of him. They'd look him up. It's some white dude. They're like, no, he's a bum. So I wasn't that, like I was upset that we lost that game, but the fact that I knew I was going to go to school the next day was just a shit-eating grin on my face of vindication that I was going to have won several arguments about Peja Stojakovic made me feel at least okay with it.
Yeah.
Vince played 63 minutes in that game. Like,
yeah.
Can you, like, that would be, if that happened today, we would all lose our minds that someone played 63 minutes in a game. And that, I don't even remember that being a storyline back then. That's the way that the coverage of the game and the way we treat athletes' bodies has changed.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was an expectation that you would play that much. Like that if, like in a 48-minute game, if you're the star player, like you better play 38, 39, 40 minutes a game. And nowadays you see like LeBron do that, and you see a lot of guys kind of cut their minutes at the 30. Obviously it's good for the athletes and all that, but just from a competitive perspective, like your best player had to be on there the longest, or it didn't make sense.
Yeah, and now it's only Tim Thibodeau that plays his players into the ground.
All right, I'll go next. This is the last game of the season, the season where Darrell Walker got fired and Butch Carter got reinstated. We won 16 games that year. I think it was year 3, maybe, I want to say. And this was at Maple Leaf Gardens, and the Sixers were visiting, town, and the Raptors were just getting killed, just absolutely destroyed by like 30 points. And then, yeah, and then this kind of happened. Allen Iverson was on the court.
Iverson draws a double team, finds Snow. Snow looks to drive, pulls up in the paint. He's no! Allen Iverson! Are you kidding me? Wow.
So, I don't know if you remember this one, Andrew. This is like he dunked over Marcus Camby for an offensive rebound. He just went over like two Raptors, including Camby, who had his feet stuck to the ground, and he just elevated, and it just punctuated the embarrassment that season was. When the 6'1" dude just skied over a 7-footer to dunk it home. And I remember after this game is when Glenn Grunwald made this apology speech to the fans in the building saying like things are gonna get better. This is rock bottom. Stay with us. I don't know if you recall this one, Andrew.
Yeah, Allen Iverson. People forget how insane of an athlete Allen Iverson was. Like, do you remember just a force of nature that dude was? I mean,
he got hit more than any other player in the NBA, and he's not even 6'1", he's like 5'11", maybe.
Yeah, he's not, and he's not. I mean, he obviously in phenomenal shape, but not a thick guy. Like, he was usually the smallest guy on the court, and just running roughshod over all of these giants.
Absolutely fearless. Like, can you even think of like a current NBA player you could compare him to, like with the same attitude and grit and just fearlessness? I can't.
I guess I was just thinking about that, and I guess it's Westbrook, but it's not fair because Westbrook is 6'6" and jacked and like maybe one of the 10 best athletes in the world right now. Like that's so it's different. It's hard to I think Allen Iverson is remembered for being a head case and for the practice video, and people remember that and stepping over Tyronn Lue, and I think because he never won a championship and because the last phase of his career really just sort of faded quickly and unceremoniously, and there were so many things that he did that was a punchline. People forget that he was a player unlike anything else that I've seen for a long time. It was amazing to watch Allen Iverson play.
Isaiah Thomas comes to mind a little bit as a comparison to Allen Iverson in terms of like the fiercelessness and the aggressiveness and just going to the rim. But you look at if you look at Allen Iverson like on the street, you wouldn't pick him out. Like he'd just be a normal guy walking on the street. Like he's not that big. He's not that like he's not big or muscled or anything like that. So that's what made it impressive, man. And the one thing about Iverson is that he never got to play with another legit star in his career.
The best player he played with was Aaron McKee.
Yeah, man. Right. Exactly.
That was the best player they brought in, Aaron McKee.
Unreal when you think about that. Like if you pair him with like any other, like if Vince and him were together or something like that. Like today we have like LeBron and Kyrie Irving, like some of the best players in the league, like playing on the same team. That never happened with Iverson. So if he had that opportunity, I'm sure he would have won at least a couple of championships.
Yeah, and I mean, like there's a couple great, like there's a great 30 for 30 on Allen Iverson, and they've got some of his high school football clips too, where he was just an absolutely unreal wide receiver, I think.
Yeah.
Allen Iverson. I think that Allen Iverson popularized the neck tattoo, because do you remember when Allen Iverson, like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the neck tattoo was like, if someone had the neck tattoo, you knew they were a head case. Like that's someone who's going to get in a fight. That's someone who's probably going to get suspended. That's a guy who's a problem in the locker room. You never used to see neck tattoos on guys who were not probably crazy.
Mm.
And now and Allen Iverson was an example of that. Like Allen Iverson was, he was a handful, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think that his popularity really helped usher in not just the sleeve, but also the neck tattoo.
Who do you think popularized tattoos in the NBA? Like who's the earliest guy you can remember who's like you could give credit to as like that's the guy who started the tattooing thing?
I'm not sure. Like I remember Rodman was the first guy who I remember having tattoos everywhere. I don't know if I just didn't used to notice before that, or if he was just maybe the first like premier player who was covered in tattoos.
What about Rasheed Wallace? Like, didn't he have he had a pretty noticeable tattoo?
Yeah, he had some neck tattoos too. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, good one. So, let's over to you, man. What do you got?
The next one for me I have is we're gonna go away from positive vibe. Oh, I guess that wasn't really a positive vibe, but
we did lose that game.
When it felt like the team was, after Vince and it seemed like the team was really heading in a good direction, and there was just years of momentum building for this team. I remember watching the draft. The year is escaping me now, but it was the Rafael Araujo draft. is stuck in my mind because I remember watching that draft, and I was watching with a cousin of mine that's a really big basketball fan, and we were both really excited about this guy named Andre Iguodala, who looked like he might. It was possible, they were reporting, could slip to where we were picking that year, and we were both really excited. We had both, watched him in college, and like Iguodala, like that'd be the perfect pairing. Can you imagine how athletic we would be? And it exactly fits the need we have, and just such a smart basketball player, crazy, crazy athletic. This would be so entertaining. And I remember him like watching the draft and just hoping Iguodala, and he slipped all the way to us, and it was such a big moment of hope and promise for me. And they went up there and they said the name Rafael Arujo, which I'd never heard of before, and I did not feel any better about once they started showing highlights and clips. And I mean, the highlights isn't even the right word, just clips. And
proof of existence.
Yeah, and then I don't need to tell everyone how Andre Iguodala's career has gone since then, because it turns out that he's pretty good, and Rafael Arujo is a bum. So that was kind of like, and that moment for me signified the end, or the beginning of the end of, positivity in Raptorland for like a decade.
Yeah, that was a turning point, because you could have gotten your small forward of the future right there. And you've taken care of like a bunch of problems. And I think you could make an argument that it's this free agency period that we finally nailed down a legit starting small forward in DeMario Carroll. And every person since has just been kind of filler, temporary, not really long term, not part of the core, but just a guy we need so we have somebody to play small forward.
Yeah, like with apologies to Tracy Murray and Mo Pete and exactly, it's like Linus Kleza. Like it has not been great.
Yeah. I think I had a similar feeling when the Raptors in the what was the Joey Graham versus Danny Granger? The exact same thing happened, right? I mean, we had the 16th pick
instead of
Danny Granger, because Granger had some injury issues coming out of college, and he fell in the draft, but then he fell to us. But then we picked Joey Graham, who, God bless him, man. I mean, he just didn't get it. He a physical specimen, but just did not understand basketball. And I always thought it was a little demeaning, to always call him, "Oh, that's good, Joey. Oh, that's bad, Joey." Like he's some sort of a child, you know what I mean?
Good job, Joey.
So, very similar feelings to.
He's a nice guy, so you never want to say anything bad about him. But like, guys, just don't make fun of him. He's not all there.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Joey Graham's family is very upset to hear this.
Yeah, but they had two NBA players though. They also had his brother, right, who played for a while.
Know who else?
Stephen Graham. Yeah.
As long as we're talking about moments in failed draft history, I remember the same cousin that I used to watch the draft with, where the Bargnani draft, it was like who's going to go first, and remember LaMarcus Aldridge was the number 2 pick in that draft, who we could have had. And by the way, a guy named Chris Bosh that played for the team right then, they apparently really wanted us to take LaMarcus Aldridge because they're both, 2 Texas guys, and they fit together and they knew each other. And apparently he was, saying like, "Hey, I think like, that could have helped us possibly re-sign Bosh." And again, a guy who this pick happened a long time ago, and we're talking about a guy that's still a premier player in the league. These are the kind of whiffs that we made.
Yeah. At that time, I was kind of indifferent to the draft because I knew it was sort of weak, so I didn't really care either way. I just thought they just need to get somebody, but they just really picked the worst possible player. I have a cousin in Kansas City who I just actually visited a couple of weeks ago, and he's a terrific ball player. We actually went to a gym there at and it was just me and him. And no, I'm like 5'7", and he's like 5'10", but he's an amazing basketball player. So we picked up, we had a couple of games, and like we went against some like 6'4" dudes, and we destroyed him like 15-1 in like 4 straight games, because this guy is just unstoppable, just the best shooter I've ever seen ever, honestly. So this guy who knows his ball, at the time he told me, "You got to take Brandon Roy. Like, he is the best player in this draft, and you have to take him because that's what the Raptors need at this point." And he was right. I mean, obviously injuries struck Brandon Roy's career, but at the time, Brandon Roy was an amazing, amazing player when he came into the league. Didn't he win Rookie of the Year too?
I don't remember if he won Rookie of the Year, but he is another forgotten name. Like, Brandon Roy was a young superstar. Like, that guy was poised to be a top 5 player for a while.
Yeah, I just Googled it up. Brandon Roy was a Rookie of the Year, and he got all the first place votes except one. Chuck Swirsky.
Ah,
Yeah, that was the story there.
did Swirsky give it to Bargnani?
Yeah, he gave it to Bargnani.
Oh, Swirsky. Come on, Chuck.
Yeah. All right, so I'll go next. So this is again at the. I remember this because I was at somebody's house and we were having a good time there. The party was going on and I insisted that the Raptor game be put on. It was like a hockey. It was like a hockey atmosphere there. A bunch of people there who were into hockey, and I was like, you got to put the Raptor game on. They're like, all right, whatever. So they put it on, and it was late, tight Raptors in Boston. It was like when Pierce and Vince used to go at it. Tight game overall. So everybody kind of put their drinks aside and started focusing on the basketball that was happening on the screen. And I was like, come on, Raptors, pull this through for me because all these people are watching, and I'll feel really good and I'll feel really special for bringing this up, and I'll further the basketball cause in Canada if you just do this right. And the score is 93 for the Raptors, 94 for Boston. 3.2 seconds left, and the Raptors with the ball, they're inbounding.
You got to try and make the ball come out to half court if at all possible.
McGrady will make the pass. McGrady looking. Loops it in. Carter's going to get a shot off. He does.
Got it! Vince Carter wins the game. There's a lot of startled Celtic players right now, but Superboy did it.
I love Tommy Hines in there, eh?
That's the Boston feed, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that's amazing. Talk about, I love just how much he didn't give a crap when the Raptors are trying to set their play up. Just so nonchalant. It's like he's telling a story about his night the previous night to someone at work that he's not that interested in. He's like, well, McGrady's inbounding the ball. Carter's got it. Puts up a shot. Yeah, it goes in. Good for Superboy. Just so Boston. That's awesome.
And somewhere in there is a clip of Kenny Anderson just looking dejected because a few years earlier he had rejected a trade to the Raptors, and the camera just panned to him and he's just holding a towel like, what the hell just happened? And if you haven't seen this, if you're a younger Raptor fan, this is a must-see TV here. Vince with a fadeaway three with a guy draped all over him from the corner, almost stepped out of bounds, but just one of the best shots I've ever seen.
Yeah. And Tommy Heinsohn almost definitely smoking a cigarette while not giving a shit about calling it.
Oh man, I love. He also had another one in against the Clippers. They were down 2 at the time, and he hit like a 30-footer to win it.
Do you remember the feeling of Vince Carter being capable of doing anything? Just give the ball to Vince, guys. It's fine. He's Jesus. Just an unbridled optimism and confidence during that couple of years when Vince was something else.
I don't know. I've never experienced that since, or even prior to that. Honestly, he was. People say he was a top 10 player in the NBA. I would say he was on course to being the best player in the NBA at that time.
It seemed that way. It seemed like we were looking at someone who was about to be what Kobe was. Yeah,
and better. He was athletically better, and he had a better jumper. Everything was better.
Yeah. It really did seem like he was on his way to being one of the all-time greats. I remember every single time, and that's my next memory, is just going to any of those games, going to as many games as I could. I just didn't care how shitty the seat was, whatever it was. Every Christmas, every birthday, it was like, what do you want? It's like, I want to go to a Raptors game. That's what I want, and I just want to watch Vince play. And I remember watching him every time you'd go to the arena and you'd see him, you knew what he was going to do right before the game, where he would do that chin up on the mesh.
Yeah.
Just kind of slowly do the mesh chin up, and just watching that in person, and every time feeling like you were about to see something special. You were about to see a moment that mattered, because I thought that we were watching, the early part of what was going to be an all-time NBA story.
Yeah. And that's what makes it sad, man. The way it ended is just, McGrady leaving, and then him, ranting about not wanting to be here, and goddamn, man, that was we were on the cusp.
We talked about just how poorly run the team seemed to be.
Yeah, yeah, and going into the game, you knew that no matter what happens, you would see 2 to 3 moments which were just rare for the NBA, and it was only happening in Toronto. Like he would do something in each game, whether it be like pick a weird rebound out, or just put something back in, or just jump up for like a jump ball, or I don't know. It was always Vince always had you like watching the game because you never knew what he was going to do. I know it sounds cliche, but with him it was actually true. I don't think a game went by where he didn't do something amazing at least a couple times.
Exactly, I agree with you entirely, and it's funny. I've done this, and because I had this exact same thought experiment, and I went back and I just chose a couple games at random and read the game logs after the fact, like the local, whatever the beat writers were talking about for some game from 2001, 2000, 99, 2002, and at some point they'll be like, and then Vince did a 360 finger roll, and that like they went out of their way to mention some random play that he did that would blown you away in person, and you just read it and it's just like an odd sort of like, and then Vince, just destroyed physics with a dunk, or there was some moment that they would always talk about where he just did something crazy and crazy enough to write about it, which is weird because usually when you're reading the recap of a game, someone doesn't mention some ridiculous play that someone makes. And I mean, if it's part of a play or an important sequence in the game, yeah, but it's really hard to write about a really cool visual moment if it's just like a great dunk or something. Like if I'm writing a review for the Raptors Republic, I'm not going to be like, yeah, and then DeMar had an awesome dunk, because that's an awful sentence and it doesn't come across when reading it. But every single game they would talk about that with Vince, and when you read it, you weren't upset because you just imagined how great it might have been, because every time you watched the game, you saw something like that.
You got a favorite Vince dunk in game?
Ooh, favorite. I saw it's not a Raptors dunk, but I was watching the Olympics, the game where he dunked over the French guy.
Yeah, Weiss. Patrick Weiss.
Like
yeah.
I remember just like jumping off the couch and running around the house. Like I was actually physically running around my house after that. I couldn't believe what had happened.
I have two. I have one when he, I think it was Philadelphia versus Raptors, and Philly turned the ball over, and Vince got it on the break, and he slammed it over Theo Ratliff, who tried to take a charge, and just destroyed him. And the second one I have is, it's not even, it wasn't so much that his best, most authoritative dunk, but I always felt this dunk kind of announced him on the scene. It was against Chris Mullin at Indiana on the baseline where he drove.
That was old Chris Mullin too.
Yeah, and then but he just like reverse jammed it, and everybody was like, "Whoa, what? Just pause and let's just see what happened here. Yeah. Let's look at the evidence." And then you saw what he did, and you're like, "Holy shit! If he can do that." And then what just followed was every game there was something. But that Chris Mullin, that dunk over Chris Mullin, like to me was the start of Vince Carter's like dunkage.
Yeah. Do you remember the first 3 years of Vince's career? It felt like every 7 or 8 games he was notably better. Like there was just like this upward trajectory that seemed limitless.
Makes me sad, and I think my next moment's gonna make us sad because well, let's just play it.
Murray has it. Carter trying to get free. Carter at the buzzer. No good. And the Sixers hold on and advance to the conference finals.
Oh, I can't play the clip anymore. That's it.
Ugh.
Where were you when this happened?
I was in my mom and dad's bedroom watching that game on a 10-inch black and white aerial TV from Sears.
Really?
I swear to God. I did not grow up with a lot of money, Zarar.
I'll tell you where I was. I was at work. I used to work at Canlin Ice Sports, which is a hockey rink in
that place.
on Martin Grove and 409, and I used to work at the pro shop there, and there was a little TV, which was in the main area there, and I kind of closed the shop, even though it was like the weekend and was really busy. I just locked it, and I was like, no more hockey skates will be sharpened today. Or sticks will be sold. I need to go watch the 5 minutes of Game 7, and I huddled over, and I went and I hugged, like went over the TV, and I saw this, and my heart just sank, man. And when I came back, I just saw this like this huge lineup outside the pro shop waiting for to buy their skates or whatever the hell.
Their 5-cent candy.
And I was just like, oh, just go away, guys. I just went in and
know what I've just been through.
Yeah, it was painful.
Yeah, I think that's the worst. I think that's the worst hurt I've ever felt as a sports fan. Because that was, what year was that?
2001.
Yeah, so I was 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, like this is coming off of this just stretch of just thinking that this team was something else, and Vince was Jesus Christ, our Messiah, or whoever it was, like he was something different than a human being, and
Yeah.
that's a kick in the sports emotional heart.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That one hurt. And it was earlier in that series. Is a moment that I couldn't find on YouTube, but it was when I think it was game 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to say it was or 5, or was it? I don't know. I think it was game 3.
Or in Philly.
It was in Toronto, and it was game 4. Yeah, it was game 4. And the Raptors, if they had won that, would have gone, I believe, up 3-1 in the series.
Yeah.
And the Raptors get the ball back. They're like up 2, I want to say. It's late in the game, and Charles Oakley gets the rebound, and he doesn't pass, but he dribbles.
Yes.
And he has the high-ass dribble. Like, he's bouncing like he's never touched a basketball before.
Why are you bringing this up?
And then Allen Iverson just picks his pocket easily, goes into the left wing, and just drains a 3. And that just killed the crowd. It killed the game, and to me, it turned the series. Because now, instead of going 3-1, you're 2-2, home court back to Philly, and you're looking, looking at some bad odds there.
You know what's crazy is I haven't thought about that moment in 14 years, and as soon as you got halfway through describing it, I remembered the entire sequence. Why are you doing this to me, Zarar?
This is a depressing podcast. It's
getting dark. It's getting dark.
I think it's your turn.
All right. Well, let's carry on this theme. And the thing I remember is the summer following this series, Tracy McGrady was up for free agency, and Tracy McGrady was a big part of that team. He was young. He was pretty good, but even as a Raptors fan, I don't remember thinking he was about to be a super duper star. And as we've just talked about, had our eyes opened to the idea that we were not the best team in the NBA, and that we were not destined for unbridled success and optimism. And but Tracy McGrady was a free agent, and I remember not being that worried about it. I remember seeing his exit interview, like the interview after that game, talked about playing with Vince, and did what I was too young and naive to understand at the time, which is that the sports nonsense athlete talk that we have. We have to talk about like, well, I'm gonna have to think about it with my team and my family, and we look at what's best for me. But I love being here in Toronto, and I love like all that nonsense where it's just whatever. So I thought Tracy McGrady was coming back. I remember around the mid-July, second week of July maybe, watching Sports Center one day at lunch and seeing Tracy McGrady throwing out the opening pitch at a Chicago White Sox game wearing a Chicago hat, and they were talking about him doing his free agency tour. And there was this moment where I realized, like, he is not coming back to Toronto. And that is not something I was prepared for, and we are not, building a dynasty here. And, Vince missed that shot, but it's going to be okay because we're going to be even better next year. And oh no, it's not going that way. And see you later, Tracy McGrady.
Oh. Yeah, that was. I was with you there. I mean, I actually thought the Raptors might have a chance to get him because his cousin was here. Like, I didn't even think of the fact that they might be thinking that one might overshadow the other. Like, in my mind, they're thinking, oh, he's Jordan, I'm Pippen. We're going to make a dynasty here. It's as simple as that. But, naive me at the time didn't know that Tracy wanted his own kingdom. And if you ask both players now, or even if you have asked them, like, 3 or 4 years ago, what was the best thing to do?
Yeah, they were not thrilled about playing with each other. And here's the thing, like, despite all the evidence in front of us, despite Kenny Anderson rejecting a trade, despite Chauncey Billups refusing to play for the Raptors, despite Damon Stoudemire wanting out of Toronto early on, like, we still thought because of Vince and because of the way that team was going that people wanted to play here, and that we would retain our guys, and that we could bring free agents here because Toronto's great. Everyone everyone in Ontario knows how Toronto is apparently the center of the universe. So don't other people think that? And I think after Tracy McGrady just left like that, I don't think we expected to ever sign another free agent until Kyle Lowry re-signed.
Yeah.
Like, that was the first moment where we started to lift our guard a little bit.
Yeah. And like where I was going with that is that, you know, if you ask Tracy McGrady or Vince Carter now, like what they would have done, what the best thing to do at the time was, and they both have said publicly that they should have stayed with the Raptors and stayed together and built something here. But at the time, you know, it's about youth as well, and it's also about agents advising the wrong thing. I mean,
Sure.
These guys are 21, 20 millionaires. They're not going to make great decisions on their own, but this is where agents kick in and tell them what to do. But unfortunately, that kind of advice is rare.
A very different CBA too. Like the idea that Tracy McGrady could be a first-round pick that could walk after 4 years in unrestricted free agency is something that wouldn't happen today either.
Yeah. Whose turn is it?
It's yours.
It's mine. Okay, I'll go with something. You know, the Wizards I've always felt was a bit of a rivalry, because Gilbert Arenas always kind of talk trash here and there. The two cities are relatively close together; they're not too far apart.
Yeah, the Anton Jameson, Vince Carter.
Yeah, you got that connection there, and the games have always been tight. And so when when the Raptors were down 3 with like 3 seconds left in Washington, I remember like there's another video on YouTube where some guy actually yelled exactly at this point, "Canada sucks," thinking that the Wizards had this game. Then
Now will the Wizards foul down the floor, and it's a deflection by Ruffin. And the play continues. Peterson got it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Is it good if it goes? We got to check it out. If it's good, we're going into overtime and a Hail Mary free by Mo Pete. I don't believe it. I just saw onions, baby onions.
Michael Ruffin, I think this is his career-defining moment right there.
Yeah, that sound, some of that sound played in a commercial that the Raptors have been playing for a year or two now. That Mo Pete.
Yeah. It was great because it was born of stupidity, and what people don't know about this is that I don't think Mo Pete had played a single second in that game up until that point. Sam Mitchell had benched him, and he had gotten him off the bench just for this play with 3 seconds left.
Because he needed threes.
Yeah, and boom, he knocked it, and the Raptors went on to win this game in OT, and obviously this clip is quite popular, but it is. I mean, the theme of the segment is that, you know, things that you'll never forget, and this is something that certainly I'll never forget.
Yeah, that was a big moment.
Mm.
Great audio, by the way.
Yeah. Chuck Swirsky. I love Matt Devlin. You know, Matt Devlin is agreeable. And he's a very nice guy, and I talked to him for like an hour. He was very kind, very accommodating, and he does his job well. Like, look, when you see Matt Devlin on Turner Sports and whatnot, man, he's amazing. He's like a top line commentator, and I hope he brings some of that mojo to the Raptors next season. But Swirsky here, man, Swirsky got a little homerism in him for the last couple of years, which became a little unbearable. But some of his calls, like this one, is just dead on.
Yeah, look at you stroking the Matt Devlin. He made an impression on you.
Well,
I don't remember you being nearly this positive before. Matt, if you're listening, Zarar used to take shots at you all the time. You're a new friend for him.
Well, actually, I'll tell you a quick story here. When we were applying for the Raptors media pass a while back, we made an application to the Toronto Raptors, and their people came back to us and they referenced an article I had written. It was about I think the Raptors had gotten blown out in the game, and I had made a reference how Matt Devlin and Leo Rautins were doing coke before the game, and they cut and pasted that and sent it back with our application. It was an awkward moment, and
so yes, some of us are not always in the most rational state to write things post game. Let's say.
Yeah, the story ended with the Raptors eventually granting us some media credentials, but a couple of years later, so it's we're all friends now. And I no longer make coke references.
Which I think, obviously, tongue in cheek.
Yes. Okay. Let's go back to you, Phil. What do you got, man?
I can't believe we haven't mentioned this yet. It's the inaugural season. The Raptors, one of the worst teams I've ever watched in my life, beating the best team I've ever seen in my life. The 72-10 Bulls, one of their 10 losses.
Here's what that sounded like.
Jordan. Kerr, 5 seconds. Pippen will have to let it go. 3. Steve Kerr. No. Jordan. Yes. But no. After the buzzer. And the Toronto Raptors have pulled it out. They've done it. The Toronto Raptors have done it. They have beaten Michael. They have beaten the Bulls.
If you hear closely, you can actually hear Rod Black getting aroused in that clip.
Oh yeah, giant sports boner.
Giant being the key word.
By the way, all of us felt like that was. It was hard to believe that happening. Like that was the biggest moment until Vince Carter showed up. That was unquestionably the biggest moment in Raptors history for the first 3 years of the franchise, 4 years of the franchise. Like that was something unprecedented. I mean, that's the best team of all time with the best player of all time losing to one of the worst teams of all time. Like that's, and they played great that day. Like that's one of the few games that they really wanted. And that was, I remember, I grew up loving basketball, and I remember watching almost every single game that first year. And I was a little kid, so it was, when you meet your parents' friends or something like that, they always look for something to say, like, hi to you for 30 seconds for, and that kind of thing. And I remember everyone in my little, whatever, it was like 11-year-old world, after that game for the next, month, they'd be like, hey, the Raptors beat Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, like this, like that was something that everybody talked about, and that was all of a sudden, it broke apart from the little sports world or the basketball world or whatever it was. Regular people knew that the Raptors
existed.
Won that game. Yeah, exactly. They existed.
Yeah. Jordan actually hit the final shot in that game to actually win it or tie it, and they just waved it off because time had run out. And in today's instant replay, who knows how that call would have gone? But the Raptors definitely huge moment for me. I used to live in Kansas City when that happened, and I knew you were moving to Toronto, so I picked up on following the Raptors a couple of years before that, and I think I was the only Raptor fan in Kansas City, Missouri at the time. I'm pretty sure.
I feel like you can confidently state that,
yeah. Yeah, and when this happened, man, I remember going to school the next day and just chest pumped out. You know what I mean? That this had happened. And when the Bulls finished 72-10, I always thought it's the Raptors that are the reason the Bulls have double-digit losses.
Yep. And that, by the way, that was their last loss of the season.
Yeah.
Question for you. Growing up in Kansas City, it's been who was what was the most popularly supported team there? Like, was it more spread out? Was it was it Bulls? Was it because of the front runners there, or what's the closest team?
There's no geographic loyalty whatsoever there. So it's about whatever team likes you. Like whatever team you like, you just pick. There's no you're not supposed to support any local team here. And for example, even if there was a local team in the state, the states in the USA work the way you don't actually support another city's team that's in your state. It doesn't work that way. In Kansas City, you wouldn't ever support the Rams.
No, God no.
Or you would never support the Cardinals, or even be happy if the Cardinals won the World Series because you're from Kansas City.
You got Royals, Cardinals. You've got even smaller than that, all the different college rivalries, the local rivalries, especially in the South.
Yeah.
So.
So there's no particular team you're supposed to follow. If you live in Toronto, you're supposed to follow the Bills because they're close to you, but there's nothing like that down there.
So as with Jordan being Michael Jordan and the Bulls being in the midst of their second three-peat, was that the most popular team in Kansas City at that time, or what do you think? What was?
It wasn't the Bulls because it was the Bulls were almost hated universally at the time because it was always you support the underdog, right?
Okay.
And the mentality was always the Bulls should lose because the underdog should always win. So whoever the Bulls were playing on the night, teams were kind of going for that team unless you were a Michael Jordan fan. Because there weren't many Bulls fans at the time. There were a lot of Michael Jordan fans.
Yeah, but there's no need even saying that there were Michael Jordan fans at the time. Just say they were human beings at the time, because everybody was a Michael Jordan. If you even pretended to say something negative about Michael Jordan, or you were just an asshole. That's not a question. Can you imagine how intolerable that conversation would be?
Yeah.
That's like today when someone's like, LeBron's not that good. It's like, just shut up. We don't want to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, he was like, you know how today LeBron is like the unquestioned best player in the NBA? I mean, Jordan was that in his time, except there was even a bigger gulf between him and whoever the next guy was.
Yeah, we didn't used to have conversations about whether or not Michael Jordan was the best player in the NBA. The conversation was like, is Michael Jordan the best athlete alive, or is it Gretzky, or is it Bo Jackson?
Yeah. During that season, the Jayhawks, the Kansas Jayhawks, had a pretty good season, and Paul Pierce used to play for the Jayhawks at the time.
Yeah.
So during that period, college basketball, as it always is, was huge there, and the Roy Williams was the head coach, and they had some good teams there. So I'd say NBA wasn't even number one; it was always about college basketball there. And Jacques Vaughn used to play for KU at the time, and Scott Pollard was there. Rafe LaFrance.
By the way, played for the 2001 Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, there you go. Rafe LaFrance, if you remember him for.
Oh yeah, Rafe LaFrance.
All right, so we got off topic there, but I'll go, man. This is a moment that's just pretty popular, but it has to be mentioned because otherwise this segment would be incomplete. And this is at the All-Star Saturday night.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Vince Carter also has a few stitches in that left hand. He incurred an injury dealing with weights in the weight room, so he stitched up in the left hand doing all this.
Oh, it's over! It's over, ladies and gentlemen!
The judges are coming over the table to congratulate Vince Carter. This is unheard of.
Oh, my goodness gracious! It is over! Can I call it Danny or what? Hey, Tracy McGrady, he doesn't even know what to do. He's walking away. He plays with this guy every day, and he's in awe.
Another look.
Oh. Hey, Danny. Hey, Kenny, he's got 3 of your top 5 all-time already. But what he told me before the contest, he said he watched all of these dunk contests. He was going to take a little bit of someone else, a little bit of Dominique, and put them together. So he put the Isaiah Ryder with the Spud Webb and threw it the bounce pass and threw it to himself and dunked it. Impossible.
How proud were you at that moment as a Raptor fan?
I was about as proud as I could be. I don't want to toot my own horn here, but the coolest thing that I ever owned growing up was a Toronto Raptors starter winter jacket. Do you remember the starter jackets?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I had a Toronto Raptors one, and I got made fun of a little bit for having that as a kid. I went to a very preppy school, a very whitewashed suburban school, and I didn't fit in that well, and I took a lot of shit for it. And it teased me about like Barney, like a big purple dinosaur. And I remember after that, like walking back, being like, "Yeah, let's see this now." And that jacket was notably cooler every day after that.
Mm. After he made this dunk, the camera panned to the NBA players in the audience, and every single one of them is just, legitimately not just pretending, but their jaw actually has dropped. And you're like, yeah, it got dropped because somebody from the Raptors did that to you, man. And it was such a proud
best dunk you've seen, probably ever.
Yeah, and you talked about like being like Vince Carter announcing himself. You talked about the dunk earlier on Chris Mullin, but this moment right here, this is what made him a national sensation.
And by the way, like as far as swag goes, like the way that he just walked off after that dunk and just like it's over, like just owned like that level of self-confidence after doing something to earn that kind of level of self-confidence is so. I love seeing moments of that.
He had some swagger, eh?
Just swagger. Just. By the way, I misspoke earlier on in this podcast when I said that the Hidu Turkoglu ball. When I said that was the best Raptors soundbite of all time, it's the second best soundbite of all time. Because the best Raptors soundbite of all time is accompanied by the video, and it's when Vince just is flashing, it's over. It's over. And we all have a voice in our head when we see that clip that says it's over. It's silent. The commentator is yelling it's over after that, but Vince is just mouthing it's over. And in our heads, we all have a voice that just says it's over. That's the best Raptors soundbite of all time.
Yeah, and it looks like this podcast might be over quite soon, unless you have one more, Andrew.
Why would I try to come up after that? That's it. That's the top. That's the best.
It is. And I think we ended with the most memorable one, because I remember that All-Star weekend, man, and it was so proud of being a Raptor fan at the time, and I hope that over the next couple of years we achieve something close to that. I deep down I know that it'll never be as good, maybe. I don't think we'll ever see a player, or I hope to, but I just don't see. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll get a player of Vince's caliber with that level of talent someday again on the Raptors. But odds are that's not going to happen for a while, and hopefully this team kind of gets us excited again, kind of like what the Jays are doing this year. You know what I mean? Like if you've been a long-time Jays fan, this is awesome, and I just want the same feeling to go over to Raptor fans.
You know what? I don't think the conversation we've had over the course of this podcast would not have had this tone 2 years ago, or probably even 1 year ago, because over the last year and a half, like, as Raptors fans, at least you and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think it's a growing trend, is we've all stopped hating Vince Carter for leaving and the way he left, and that whole relationship has been completely, I don't know, like, not necessarily completely rehabilitated, but like, if you still want to hate Vince Carter or boo Vince Carter at this time, then you're just an idiot. Like, it's whatever. It's something that's gone away, and we can just come to peace and look back at that period in time and just be fond about it and talk about it. And I think that now that the Raptors don't suck anymore, and that we had times where we were really excited about this team again, and we're really optimistic, and we won. There's not a championship, obviously, but at least games. I think that we're able to talk about the past with a certain fondness and without a certain pessimism and, just sort of protected, like, guarded, shielded self. That it's fun now. It's really fun to look back on the history of the team and the moments that we had, though they aren't necessarily few and far between. It's a different place that we're in because of this team that we have now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some hope here. And what's interesting in our conversation has been that we have pretty much entirely skipped over the Chris Bosh era.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't think it's. I tried to think of Chris Bosh moments, and like I was trying to come up with for the podcast ideas, and I was thinking of, like, there was like like a 4-minute stretch in an All-Star game where Chris Bosh was the most dominant player on the floor. The Predator, dreaded Chris Bosh, like dreadlock Chris Bosh, just took over an All-Star game for a little bit.
Yeah.
That was this like really proud moment I remember having. But outside of that, I tried to think of moments that stood on my brain in the Chris Bosh
the best I could come up with, like, Andrew, was when he hit that 3 from the corner to beat, like, the Rockets, like in his rookie year. I guess. You know what I mean?
It's not. I don't think that's an indictment of Chris Bosh so much as it is an indictment of that era of Raptors ball. Like, that was. I mean, like, hey, let's get swept in the first round of the playoffs. We were just showing up to watch Chris Bosh be really good and try to convince other people that weren't Raptors fans or were other teams' fans that Chris Bosh was as good as we were saying he was. And I think that by the time that Chris Bosh finally left Toronto, everyone kind of acknowledged that, yeah, Chris Bosh is actually as good as you guys have been saying he is. He plays for Miami now, though.
Yeah. And
that was that.
Yeah, I think there's one moment, not related to Chris Bosh, but that is always, I remember, is Will Solomon. One day in Orlando, we're playing like a meaningless game, and Matt Devlin's making the call, and Will Solomon actually jumps up to make a pass, and he finds nobody. So what he does is he throws it in the backcourt. Like, he flips it over his head and into the backcourt. And Devlin's call, I couldn't find it on YouTube, is like, Will Solomon, what in the world are you doing, man? That was the surprise in Devlin's voice, and you could tell at the point that we were shit. Like, we were shit. And that what in the world applies to that entire era of Chris Bosh. As you said, it's not necessarily Chris Bosh's fault. It's all the pieces around, the Linus Klezas, the Jason Caponos, the Jared Jacks that we tried to put around him and tried to make it a competitive team by putting, like, hoping something would stick. And deep down you knew that it was never going to work. And it kind of affected Chris Bosh. And unfortunately, he's, he was the best player on those teams. And as you said, it's not an indictment on him. It's just that there's nothing positive or memorable from that entire era that I can kind of take back and say, yeah, that was a nice time. Like, there's nothing I can say.
No, it was a time when, yeah, like I exactly. That's just that. That's that period of time. It was the Chris Bosh era, and I think everyone who watched it agrees that Chris Bosh was really, really good, and we really liked Chris Bosh, and we, at best, didn't suck that much.
Yeah. And the era previous to that, the Babcock era, was probably, I'd say, the darkest time. to be a Raptor fan, because I think
Darkest timeline.
yeah, that was, I think, the Chris Bosh era was still more positive because we had a couple of 500 seasons. There was a chance we could win a game once in a while. We were somewhat competitive. But the Babcock era was the one where there was just no hope because you had a horrible style of play under Kevin O'Neill. You had some horrible moves being made, draft picks being screwed up. You talked about Rafael Arroyo trading Vince Carter for like garbage. It's just nothing positive in those 2 to 3 seasons.
There were dark times. Dark times there are.
Yeah. All right. So with that we'll sign off, man. I think we've talked enough. It's well over an hour, and hey, thanks, man. Thanks for the conversation. It was it went down memory lane here, man.
Yeah. We did it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, listener, we'll see you guys next week when we'll drum up some other topic. Maybe we'll preview the East and talk some real basketball.
Oh.
See ya.